Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Bafun, and this podcast is an extension of my book, also called Listen to Your Footsteps, which is a collection of essays, reflections, and poetry on things like fatherhood, identity and belonging, growing up, creativity, and the lessons learned. The purpose of this podcast is to gain insight and learn from the journeys that others have taken. I explore the worlds of art, culture, design, business, creativity, and life from the perspective of Africans who are contributing to the redefinition of the continent and who we are. Welcome. My special guest today is someone I'm very honored when Ayob said, "Oh, she's booked. She's coming through to our little podcast." She's a singer, a songwriter, a performer, Zoë Modiga. How are you, Zoë?
Yeah. Hello.
What's happening?
How are you?
Where does Zoë come from? I mean, Palesa Nomtandazo to Zoë. Where does the name come from?
So, my birth names are Palesa, which means flower in Sesotho. I think my mom gave me that name. And then there's Nomtandazo, which I got from my first best friend, who's my grandfather. It was my grandmother's name. It means mother of prayer. Then there's Pumelele, which I'm told my father gave me. He was setting me up for success, and that name means success. So I'm very chuffed about that. Zoë is like the final destination of a lot of nicknames from Nomtanda Zo. So it would be Nomtiti, it would be Nomzo, Mzo. It would be like the whole thing. And then it became Zo, and then Zo became Zoë. So, yeah.
And then, to all intents and purposes, I get that you're a Zulu girl.
Yeah.
With the name Palesa.
And a maternal surname, Modiga.
And a surname Modiga.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So funny. So, my grandfather was based in Northwest. That's where Abagwa Modiga are from originally. And he migrated down to Pietermaritzburg. So that's how Abagwa Modiga, there's a section of our family that is Zulu speaking. And then there's another section that's Tswana speaking. And when we meet up now, it gets interesting because sometimes the wires get crossed, the jokes get missed, but alas, we are here. Yeah, so on my maternal side, that's how the Modigas kind of met up in that place. But my father is Zulu. He was raised as a Xhosa Mpondo man, but he met his father, who was a Zulu man, much later on before he passed away. So that's kind of like, on a DNA level, I am Zulu, and I'm Tswana as well, and many other things that are swimming in there that
As
I like.
They say, that's actually the way or the future of the world. And also, so with me, it's kind of easier to go, it's mixed heritage, mixed culture, because of different races.
For sure.
But I find that with most people, I mean, especially this part of the world, but in general, most people, there is a mix of cultures within our DNA, within our bloodstreams. That's actually the norm as opposed to the exception.
For sure. I mean, I love the fact that I'm a melting pot, and I've actually also been confused for Kenyan. When I'm outside of South Africa, it's always like, "Are you from Kenya?" And I'm like, "Okay, yes, I'm from Kenya." I've also been confused for being a Xhosa as well. And again, I have a grandmother who is Mpondo, so maybe it's in the cheekbones, maybe it's in the essence and the aura, but that comes through. So I love to be confused for different things. And I think I resonate more with the idea of being a melting pot rather than one particular thing.
Yeah.
Even though I'm proud of the things that I've identified myself to be as well,
You talk about your grandfather as your first best friend.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with your father? Because I mean, I was looking at something recently where you were performing and you dedicated a song to your father, and I believe the words were, "Even though he wasn't physically here." What is that relationship? And by extension, in terms of what role did your grandfather play in terms of, let's say, a male influence or a masculine influence?
Oh, this is interesting because I know you have like strong opinions about fatherhood. Like I
Yeah,
checked
well,
that out, and I found that to be a very like fascinating thing. Maybe I'm not putting it the right way, but so my father was a very brilliant man. He was very, even as my father, I recognize that he's the person that you only meet once in a lifetime. My relationship was that of admiration towards him. I come from a very blended family, so I've got a lot of mothers and one father, and he still maintained such a pride when it came to all his children.
Okay.
And we all look like him. We all look like that guy, but he was incredible. He was a genius. He loved people. I did kind of breed some kind of complicated feelings around him because he wasn't always there. It was a person that I would visit like maybe once in a year. And I'm grateful he was insistent because he always wanted all his children in one place. But to have us in one place is not something that's going to happen all the time. There's like plus 20 something of us, you know. So
that's booking out a park or a community center.
A little church in the lollies, you know, that's like all of us fitting in there. But yeah, I did have some complicated feelings, but I still admired him and I still have so much love for him. And I dedicated, really, I think my sophomore album to the experiences I had with him. Sophomore album's called Inganegwane, which means Zulu fairy tale. There was a lot of internal conversations I was having about my relationship with my dad. And one of the songs called Utata, which is what he liked to be referred to as, because Tata Baba Father, is a song that is wordless, that was a dedication to all these weird and wonderful and layered and beautiful and complicated feelings that I have. But I think one of the most beautiful gifts I have with the relationship with my dad is being able to humanize him. I think for me, that's where a lot of the dust settled. That's where I found a lot of peace in recognizing that this is a human being who roamed the world and was trying to also figure some things out and was brilliant as a human being and was a beautiful person and a very handsome one. And he gave me really nice legs and a cool mouth. But it was an important thing for me to realize. And as I get older and older, I'm like, oh man, there's things I get. Like I get it more. I get it more when it comes to him.
I think there is a beauty in, as you put it, humanizing our parents, because it's also an opportunity like that. And it's an opportunity that not a lot of people get.
Yeah. Like
to reach the point where your parent is a human being, flawed, like we all are, but perfect in their role within your life.
Yeah. Because they start off as superheroes, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do wrong. I believe I can fly, okay, with my parents. And then it's like, ooh, a crack here, you know, a wrinkle there, a joke that doesn't land there, you know. But yeah, it is a privilege that many people don't have. And even though my dad is not around, my mom is still living, and I'm grateful to be humanizing her, as even as complicated as that is, because it's a lot of work to humanize, you know. But it's beautiful to also just see her as a co-creator of mine, but also as a person, as a homie, you know, as a person who's constantly vouching for me, and who I'm learning the different layers of. You know,
I guess because, like you're saying, I mean, they start off as superheroes, and you actually need to get down to the level of, okay, this is a human being, and we are all multidimensional. Once you've accepted that this is another human being, not just this role or this hat that they're wearing, then you can start to kind of see the layers beneath all of that.
Yeah. And it's actually caused me to make peace with my own humanness as well. Because I don't know if it's the experience of being a young Black person given a set of opportunities that you hope to take. I don't know if it's being a woman and having to, one of the first things we're taught is to be liked and to, you know, kind of present a certain way. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's all of those things. But being able to humanize my parents has allowed me to really see my humanness as well, and not to have a version of myself that is a pedestal that I put on myself or a self-righteousness that I feel I need to exist in and walk with. But it's like actually making peace with these people that created or were part of creating me, I believe. I get to make peace with myself.
Yeah.
And the things that I don't like, the things I think are very ugly about myself. And then I get to enjoy the things I think are really cool as well. That's the nice part.
Your grandfather?
My grandfather, my bestie, I used to steal his pens. It's literally a running joke in my family. So I would steal his pen so that I could like scribble. And he'd always get like pissed about it. Like, Palisa, where's my pen? And I'd be like, sorry, Mkulu, it's another one. DJ Khaled, another one. And he used to like writing, like entering the lottery and all of that. So he'd always be fiddling with his pen. But for some reason, I found it endearing to use his pen for my own little artistic pursuits.
So I had a little moment this morning. Well, it's a couple of times, but if you look at my fingertips, there's ink. Because I write and I use fountain pens. And like for journaling, for my notes, for meeting notes, whatever, I use fountain pens. And I'd opened a pen up and it looks like the ink had leaked. And I was taken back to growing up. Like in high school, you always, you wrote with a pen. Like there were no iPads, etc. And my father always had his one main pen that sat in his shirt pocket, clipped in properly.
Yeah.
But we all walked around with like ink on our fingertips. And like I had a moment this morning where it's like, I guess for a couple of generations afterwards, and my kids even more so, it's not something that even connects, that they connect with. Whereas for me, it was just like, oh, wow, ink.
Yeah.
And, talking about your grandfather and pens, like, I get that. Like, I get the importance of it's his pen. And when he wants his pen, he needs to have his pen. But also as a point of connection. It's like a little game that the two of you played that actually symbolized that connection with a random physical object.
Exactly. And what a wonderful way of putting that. Because it was a connectedness. Because I could have just asked him to buy a pen. But no, I wanted his pen. The one that he doodles and goes about living his life with. That's the one that I want. So that I can mimic that in my own way and do my own doodlings with. So, oh wow. That's quite a way to put that connectedness. Yeah.
Let's come to music. So before we get into music, I read somewhere that you briefly thought about being a dentist. I mean, how true is that?
Yeah, it's very true.
You've been on the press run, so we understand that sometimes what's out there is not necessarily what was said exactly.
Yeah. I actually have to say thank you for acknowledging my grandfather. I think spaces that allow for him to exist, it's very beautiful for me to be able to utter his name and it not necessarily be about the press run of things, you know what I mean? So I appreciate that. Dentist. I was in grade 2? Grade 4? Must have been grade 2. And you know how schools will take you to different trips, and it just so happened that we were all going to see how a dentist goes about doing their thing. And we did the whole checking of the dental formula and all of that. And we got these lucky packets. I actually still have like a chalk mouse from those lucky packets. Wow. Don't know why the chalk mouse, but it still exists. Wow. And there's no way I could possibly use it. But from that experience of this dentist being so kind and giving us these things that we would take home, and the feeling of it made me want to be a dentist. So it was never so much about the career of teeth, all different kinds of teeth. It was more about the feeling that I wanted to make people feel. And I think that's what made music the final destination. But I think that's why the dentistry spoke to me. It was because of how it felt to be there. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. I've talked to a couple of people, and I remember talking to Papama, who did Africa Your Time Is Now t-shirts and stuff, and I've known her for years. she was actually the first guest on the podcast. But I've been kind of going back over stuff, and I was looking at something that she said where she talked about, wanting to be a mother and a housewife, and which at the time reminded me of a stage when my son wanted to be a security guard. But it wasn't the job he was connecting with. He was connecting with security guards keep us safe. And Papama, she articulated it much better than I probably will now, but it was about, it's about nurturing and the beauty and the joy of having family and having that closeness and being able to nurture, etc. And that sounds exactly like what you're saying in terms of you looked at the dentist and you didn't look at because when I think of dentist, spending my day staring into people's mouths is not necessarily the thing I want to do.
Yeah,
and I'm grateful that there are those out there who want to do it because we need everyone.
Yeah,
right?
Good riddance. Yikes.
But you weren't connecting with that. It's like the person and that feeling, like you're saying.
Yeah. And I think maybe we all ultimately do that. We're just connecting with the way things feel. And I think for me, it's important as a result of seeing the power of feelings and experiences and how you can't really trade that for anything. It's important for me to facilitate that as a storyteller, but also as a human being. Like, I'm not claiming to be the most self-aware person, but I actively do try and nurture the space of like how others feel around me without feeling like I'm trying to be anything outside of who it is that I am, because heck, I can only be myself. But I'm very cognizant of that because of how powerful that is in my work, but also to make life imitate the art as well. I never wanted to be like, it's just ethereal, great feeling on the stage, and then off the stage, it's rotten, it's ugly, she sucks. Like, I'm always trying to marry that space of creating just a warmth of feeling and experience, and people being seen and feeling like they are seen and just, operating from that space.
So we all do that to a certain extent, but not all of us manifest it, if that makes sense. So like we all get that. Like my father used to say, the simplest thing to do is be yourself, right? So we all recognize that. And we all recognize that it's about how things make us feel. But not a lot of us follow through and actually manifest it, which is something that you did. And I want to get a sense of when that journey started. Because you started studying music from high school.
You could say maybe a bit before that.
So going down that path, if we're talking about grade 4 having this feeling about feeling, and with hindsight, you can say, with connecting the dots, you can say you recognize that that's what you're doing with your work, with your craft, right? So the seed is planted, let's say grade 4, and then you go on this journey and you can continuously evolve and manifest it. When is there a moment? Generally it's never moments. It's processes, right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get a sense of at what stage does it start to feel like, do you know what? I can do this with the rest of my life.
That's an interesting question. Because my relationship with music has always come from a space of observing and the feeling of things. And when I think of the first teacher, the first time I was a scholar of music, I was simply observing the way that my community related to music. And in the most mundane ways, I'm talking about spring cleaning and ugogo playing Joyous Celebration on the highest volume, to the shack that is attached to the house next door, and that guy having really dope taste in music. He listened to like Luther Vandross all the way to TKZ, all the way to that and everything in between, to like a tavern on the other side, and them being like into like maskandi and bakanga, and like being able to observe people exist, just simply exist, and realizing that music is such a big part of me enjoying and finding such beauty in just seeing that, and that feeling thing coming again. That was like the first point for me where music happened. And it was then that I realized I wanted to make people feel like that. Now, for that to translate into wanting to do it, I think music brainwashed me. I don't think there was ever a point where I was like, yeah, this is it. I think it just started happening with junior choir, and it just never stopped. Junior choir became penny whistle group, became entering little Stedford's competitions, poetry, dancing, choir, solo singing, theater, classical music, jazz music. It all just fell into itself. And I decided, I guess, to follow the flow of that. But I think as much as I was also following the flow of it, there was also a recognition from my family and those around me that this is probably what I'd do. So I was lucky enough to never experience a resistance. It was always like, oh, she should go to the National School of the Arts. You know, she's artsy-fartsy and we're always going to everything of hers. So I'm thankful for that not being a point of resistance. But there was never a choice. I think it just was. Music just always was and became and is happening and
That's
becoming.
brilliant. I mean, it's just starting off with kind of National School of the Arts, and recently having a conversation with a friend whose daughter is that, and us having a conversation around how National School of the Arts would be probably the best place for her. Yes. I mean, although the challenges now, so that made it a debate. But a space like that, and talking about the importance of having spaces like that. And I was struck when we're having that conversation by the fact that we're having that conversation, because, you know, from my perspective, and it's a limited outside perspective, that's the kind of conversations parents have now. But in the recent past, it was not part of the lexicon. Like, it wasn't part of the lexicon to go, oh, she's arty and stuff, so there's a school that does for people like her. She must go there. And the fact that you had that, which in essence probably eased the way, like, lubricated the path a bit. Absolutely. Compared to other people around you even. Absolutely.
You know, and I remember, so the National School of the Arts is on a hill in Braamfontein, and my aunt happened to be working close to the school. And she was the one that was like, yo, she should totally come here. I hear good things about this space. Because before that, I was going to go like to high school in Sasolburg, to like a girls' school there, you know, because those were the conversations I was having with my peers.
Ironically, my nephews and niece all went to high school in Sasolburg.
Oh, Vobs. You see, so they're onto something.
Yeah, my brother-in-law worked for Sasol.
Got you.
And when we talk about blended families, his origins are Toyando.
Oh, whoa.
From Venda. So it's like a Venda Ghanaian mix with my nephews.
Hey, I like this melted pot. That's a very fascinating melted pot, you know. But yeah, so it was beautiful to be in a space where it wasn't just me and a couple of people in a school that had these artistic pursuits, but we were all in it together. There's literally this movie called High School Musical. We would literally sing it in the hallway. We're all in this together. That's like some young millennial-ish.
For Gen X, for us, it was Fame.
Oh,
Fame,
yeah. I want to live forever. I think we claim that one too, actually. Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. We claim Fame.
Well, as a school, you can. As a school, you can. As a generation, sorry.
Next. So, yeah, it was beautiful to be in a space where everyone was artistically inclined, and there was also a lot of very smart people because you needed to take the traditional subjects in school and then have the extramural kind of be the music, or what the sport would be the music, because there weren't sports in that school, But it was really powerful to connect to people that are of the same like wavelength and that have the same goals. And I mean, there's some that studied there and ended up being pilots and doctors and all these really cool things as well. But the conversation and the young confidence being built by that is actually irreplaceable. Like, you learn confidence early on, because we would also be auditioning for plays. We would also be going, I mean, there was a year where I was a part of our school production, Sarafina, and because of the drama teacher, we were able to go perform at, what do you call this? Not me forgetting this iconic moment, the World Cup 2010.
Okay.
So we ended up opening like the flags, because those were the accesses that we were able to receive from being in that space, So, and I think even as I look back fondly on this journey of music and being a scholar, by observing, but also by actually learning it, it's one of like the fondest moments, one of the freest examples for me of this music thing.
Did you go and study after that?
Yes.
What did you study?
I did.
The beautiful thing about like researching, and I mean, others can tell you, or I'll confess that I prepare half-heartedly for these conversations.
Isn't that best though?
Because I wanted to be a conversation.
Yeah.
But I still felt the need with you yesterday to sit down and go, I need to find out, like, she's on the press run, so she's doing 101 interviews. What am I going to ask? And different things will reference, like, it'll be a throwaway reference to, like SA Music at UCT, like Music Center UCT, but not clear, not definitive. Like, I need a sentence to go, she went to and studied.
Yeah. I feel you. I feel that. So after studying classical piano, voice, and clarinet, there was like actually in grade 10, while I was studying classical music, there was like this career day where we had to dress up as what we wanted to be. And I dressed up as a jazz singer. When I look at those pictures, I do not look like much of a jazz singer in those pictures. I'm like, girl, what was this?
Okay, what were you wearing? Because what does a jazz singer look like?
Exactly. I mean, what I wore was like a black polo neck, which I'm wearing right now while talking to you. It was like a brown black skirt. I mean, it's nothing that you could look at and think, yeah, this is what this is. So that was hilarious, actually. So from that, I found so much discipline in the world of classical music, practicing 8 hours a day on each instrument. And I just wanted a different discipline. And that's when I went to audition to be at UCT at the music college. I still remember the audition. It was the year before I'd be doing my first year, obviously. And I saw 2 of the teachers that would teach me. One looked really like intimidating, and the other one looked like she looked like the Powerpuff Girl. Like, she looked like really approachable and like sweet and everything. So I remember doing I forgot which song. Oh, Bewitched. So I did Bewitched, bothered and bewildered am I, which is like a jazz standard that I happened to learn a classical version of where I was coming from. So auditioned, and then I got the call that I was going through. And thank goodness, because if I didn't get in there, I would not have gone to college. Because I did not try for anything else. It was like, this is what's happening, So, that was the beginning of UCT, as we fondly refer to as the College of Knowledge, the College of Good and Bad.
It seems like you're comfortable with an element of, let's say, uncertainty, and going with the flow, and not kind of being too prescriptive in terms of, okay, this must happen, and then this must happen, and this must happen, this must happen. Have you always had that?
I think so. I think it's never been a point of resistance. I feel like I've always been allowed to exist within my intuition and to be trusted with the decisions that I make around that in very many simple ways from a very early age. And it's something that I've is like a built-in software at this point. And it's the thing that I lead with. And yeah, I feel like my life looks like that. It looks like a going with the flow. But I think there's a science to it as well. You know, I think, yes, it might be like, okay, go with the flow, gut feeling. But for me, I really do trust that place because it usually leads me to places that are serving what I'm supposed to be doing in my personal life or in my music life or whichever other life that I'm lifing with. But yeah, that's always been and continues to be the thing. So I'm actually used to pursuing discomfort through my intuition because it creates a lot of ego deaths that put me in the space where it isn't about what I think I know. And from that point, really cool things happen. Yeah.
How does that manifest in your songwriting process?
Oh my goodness. It's only manifesting like that in my songwriting process in many ways.
What is your process?
It's not one single thing.
Okay.
It is intuitive. I feel like for me, process is when I position myself in a place to be a clear canvas and for there to be silence, then that's when I receive information intuitively. And from that point, that can either be a single phrase or it literally could be a whole song that just floods on me. It could be a single phrase, could be a melody that I have to build on. It could be a series of chords that I play on guitar or piano. It could be an entire song in my head that just needs me to get to a music software and put it down as quickly as I can or voice note it if I'm not next to it. You know, so sometimes these ideas, they flood in and it's a whole bunch of songs. Sometimes it's just one trickling thing, you know. But there's this singer, Usis Nogwazi. We did a songwriting camp recently and she referred to creativity as like like the catching of angels. And I found that to be so resonant because that's what it is, you know. It's very intuitive. It is a thing that you, also Msagi says it, she's a song catcher, you know. It's like a thing of having the opening, being the opening to catch this intangible thing to the point where it is tangible and there are actual musicians playing it and people singing along to it, you know, and it takes a life of its own.
Such an interesting, I mean, like the Greeks had the muses, you know, how, I guess, through time and through history in all spaces, it is this, you know, serving as a channel. And a lot of creative people, particularly within kind of the arts in inverted commas, will talk about serving as a channel for something. And I say that just thinking, somebody always told me, so I'm always fascinated by craft. So that's always a question I'll ask, like, how do you do what you do? While recognizing that that question is weird in itself. Because I also recognize the fact that, like, when I used to write poetry, it was, you know, sometimes you sit down and you write and I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So there is no process, but it's always a question I feel the need to ask.
Yeah. It's like things coming from the ether. You know, from that other place, that wordless place.
Yeah.
Without trying to sound like falala, you know. That's what it feels like.
I'm fascinated by names. So what's in the name? You've got 3 albums. You know, those Yellow, the novel.
Yes.
And then Nganekwane, Kimosoto. So you'd have to excuse my Zulu pronunciation. And then now Nomtandazo. When does the name come for an album or for a song? You know, when do you decide which comes first, like the name or the thing?
Oh, I think the thing, for me in my experience, outside of this last album actually, because the name felt like it came first. But for Yellow the novel, it was the music that poured out, that lived, and then it the name came after that.
Okay.
And yellow, my favorite color, it was my debut body of work. It's a novel because literally it's a long album. There's like 23 tracks there. 23 is my favorite number, my lucky number. I was born on the 23rd of February. But novel in the sense that I felt like my assumption would be people listening to it the same way that you'd read a book. It's not just la 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 la, but you'd have to take time out to hear it, So yeah, that came towards actually at the end. Inganekwane was kind of floating around as a name because there's a song called Inganekwane from Yellow the Novel. It's one of the only Zulu songs in the first album that was predominantly English. And when I would sing that song, I was like morbidly insecure about expressing myself in my mother tongue, even though it was so natural to me, because I feel like when we get angry, mother tongue.
Yeah.
When you are feeling passionate about something, mother tongue. But for some reason, I felt like I couldn't do my language justice. But when I would sing that song, people would really inspire and pour into me the idea of going deeper into pursuing writing in my language. So that's kind of the inspiration of the second album. And then also the fact that it's a Zulu fairy tale, but it's an album that was based off of celebrating people of color, the Black experience, and the fact that we're not a fairy tale, that we're very real beings. And I'm very fascinated with the real of people and the ethereal of people.
Okay.
Like it's a very fascinating space for me to question and, formulate ideas about. And then with Nomthandazo, it was during lockdown and it was a prayerful space. And I found that all the songs that were coming were prayerful. And I felt like my grandmother, whose name was Nomthandazo, was very much in this world. There was like a matriarchal thing, a her thing that was there, even though I'd never met her. I just felt like she was around. And yeah, that's where that name came from, Nomthandazo, Mother of Prayer. So yeah, but the names of things are so fascinating. Even with songs, it's like, do you choose the thing that you sing the most?
Yeah.
Do you choose what the song is about as the name? Yeah, it's interesting.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. I delve into their journeys, the decisions they've taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the conversation takes us. Because with poetry, I always struggled with titles. But I'm talking about it and I realize that even writing articles, like I've never been, headlines or headings have never been my thing. So with my poems, I tended to kind of just sit and go through like 10 and just kind of skim through it and then give it a title, skim through it and then give it a title. Was that level of, that level of thought would go into my titles.
But if you're skimming through 10 poems and you come up with the title, what would the title be inspired of? Is it the tone?
Whatever word pops in or sentence pops into my head.
Okay.
I have very few poems that feel very deliberately titled. I haven't written poetry consistently in over a decade, but funny enough, the one title that pops into my head is The Infinite Pursuit of Us.
Ooh.
And it's a short poem. Ayob would remember the poem better than I. I never remember my poems. But it's basically about, I guess it's about promiscuity. So it's, I wandered, etc., but it ends with, and instead found loneliness. And the title comes from a Black Thought line in the middle of one of the Root songs. And when I heard that line, I heard the poem because it's also very, very short. But in general, like I said, I'll literally just sit down and write, and then somebody says, you're going to get up on stage and perform it, and they're asking you what's the title, and it's like, blue skies over yonder.
Yeah.
And then you move on to the next thing.
For sure. How fascinating that you would name a short poem and there's an eternity in the title, like infinite.
Yeah.
And yet it's
actually,
like a short poem.
Yeah. Ne?
Yeah.
So actually, we're going to jump to something that you tweeted. I think it's the perfect moment.
Okay.
So there's somebody that we have a couple of common friends.
Yes.
It's a common friend, and I asked her. I was like, so I'm going to chat to Zoe. What should I ask her?
Mm-hmm.
And she just sent me this in a WhatsApp, and there was a tweet. I want to do an instrumental album, but it's the meltdowns and think pieces. It's no fun here. And it feels like the right time because we're now doing think pieces on on short poems and titles and the use of the word infinite. But the question was, I mean, the formal question, as she put it, was, what are your thoughts on art criticism in South Africa as an artist? Is there enough quality criticism, and how do you respond to it? And I think, I'm grateful to her for kind of highlighting that tweet because it does say a lot about what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But now I want you to articulate it.
Yeah. For those who are listening, my eyes could not have rolled further back into my skull at the idea of this question, right? Not because of the person asking it, but just like the idea of criticism. It's funny, before coming here, I did my hair, as I mentioned earlier, and I did my makeup in my car, and I was on my IG live. And I do try to be presentable in having these kinds of conversations because it's like my love language. It's like how I'm saying to you, I respect you, I respect your time, thank you for having me. But yeah, anyway, so I was listening to Thames, her latest project, happened to be listening to it while on the live. We were talking about goodness knows what. And then one person asked what I think. And I said that I don't believe in giving public opinions about people's art, considering what I feel may take to birth it into the world. I think it requires a lot of bravery, a lot of madness, insanity, sensitivity, vulnerability. I can never say that word. That I respect that so much that even if the work doesn't resonate with me, I can have think pieces amongst people that I love where we have fat chats about something, but I've just never believed in critiquing people's work because if I consider what it takes for me to put work out, I think it's more important for me to water the sensitivity that comes with that. Now, it's not to say that criticisms and whatnots are not valid. I don't like social media. I don't like social media. I don't like how people think they have the right to criticize things that they don't necessarily understand the bones and the blood and the bone marrow and the internal organs that come with said thing. And I don't like it because people will say any kind of thing and then other people will bandwagon for whatever reason who are also unqualified. And there's another question, who is qualified, right? But I cannot stand that. And I find that the bandwagoning usually doesn't come from an earnest place of wanting to get to know this music, get to know this person and where they could have been, or to find yourself in what it is that they're making. But it always seems to just spew negativity for negativity's sake. It doesn't feel like it's trying to improve the art form or to actually have really conducive critical thought about it. And I could bite my knuckles at how much that annoys me. Because I feel like people who reflect the world around them, who are courageous enough to reflect the times, they need to be respected for that. And they need to be not babied or infantilized, but they just need that place that these things come from needs to be loved on and protected. And I really believe in that strongly. And maybe it's not Yeah, I just feel like artistic people or people who have these important things to say need to be protected. And the space that these things comes from needs to be protected. And I don't like unqualified people having very loud opinions that are wrong. I mean, there was a time where I was, and now everyone's going to know I feel a way about this. I might like float around it on social media, but I actually feel a way around it. But I've been confused for like being in the Illuminati because of some work from Inganegwane. And I'm like, wait, what? Firstly, I mean, I don't have the notoriety and the fame that would come with that. That would be great so that more people can be influenced by this work. And then someone also referred to an image that we had worked on with my team as like blackface. And I was like, this is just not okay. Can you keep quiet? So, like it annoys me. And it's not to say we should only ever be complimented, right? I don't mind my work causing people to shake and lighting up our fires and kind of causing a stir. I don't mind that. I don't mind it not necessarily being a positive response. But yeah.
So what I'm
still sensitive about my ish.
I mean, what I find about like what you're talking about, particularly in terms of social media, is it's become an either or, black, white. It's become so binary. Like I may listen to something and it actually, I don't connect with it, doesn't resonate. It does not mean it is bad. It just means I do not connect with it. So the simplest thing to do, unless my work, I mean, I used to write on music, and I used to write on music more for myself and share it, but I've done it in magazine. When it was my work, then I'm putting that view or those perspectives out there. But if I'm not doing it for work, it's like, okay, I listen to it, it's not for me. I move on and I live life.
Yeah.
But is this drive to, it's like, it doesn't matter who you are. People must know that this particular album, I do not connect with it. And so for me, that's the one side of it. The other side of it is because I got into writing partially inspired by writers like America, particularly Black American writers like Greg Tate and Mark Anthony Neal and George Nelson and Dream Hampton, because I used to collect hip-hop magazines and music magazines. And I was fascinated by the writing, and particularly in hip-hop magazines, because it was taking a music form or a culture, hip-hop overall, and translating that into words for other people to read. So the music, the DJs, the breakdancers, the graffiti artists were doing it in their way. And then you had writers kind of articulating it or translating it to words. And so for me as a young, boy sitting in Maseru, reading all of this stuff, that's what I connected with. And what I find is that also we lack that side of it, where if we're going to go into depth, using the word infinite in the title of a short poem and having that discussion and writing about that in terms of, in inverted commas, critiquing that piece, I believe there's also a space for that. But when we see that, it goes so deep that you kind of go, but no, I don't see it. There's nothing there. Like the think pieces, right? All of a sudden you're analyzing something and I saw a meme the other day, and the meme is Kendrick Lamar walks into a room and goes, "Hey,"
Kendrick,
and then literally all these voices breaking down what he meant, and then it's not him obviously, but he then looks at the camera and goes, "I was just saying, hey."
Yeah, I get that.
Does that have an impact on the decisions you make around what you're creating and putting out?
Absolutely not. No, I cannot allow that.
So when's the instrumental album coming?
You know what it is? I would release so much more music more often if I felt like I had the resources to be able to do that. I'm an independent artist and I've had to find really crafty and entertaining ways of doing what it is that I do. But I mean, if it was a thing of, girl, here is $1 million, you know, do what you want. I would literally be in studio right now, pushing that instrumental album. So sometimes I do like to kind of tickle myself by having these kind of tweets that I put down. Not because I'm asking for permission, because I can't, that's not where I ask permission from. I ask it from somewhere else that is not there.
Yeah.
But I like to see kind of where people are about the ideas of things. So that tweet is like one of those like, putting the litmus paper on society and seeing.
I spend more time in the comments.
Yeah.
So I actually went through, because I do that. I went through all the comments, which, like you said, gives a sense of kind of people's thinking. And once you look past the trolls and the people who just read headlines not the article, like there was a lot of value in there.
Yeah. So, you know, with that being said, I would love to. I think I have done instrumental songs in some of my albums. Like it's like usually a track. So I think in many ways it's an Easter egg to myself of the pursuit that will then follow through at some point, you know. But there's a lot of different albums to be made. So we'll see where that falls in. But
is there a space for albums, do you think? I mean, and I asked this going, so I've never been a singles person. Like I can't do singles. So I do, like I will listen to album from beginning to end. You know, I come from you put a cassette tape in, you open the sleeve, then later it was a CD. You open the sleeve, like you read the thank yous to know who they're friends with. So I come from that. So although I play music digitally, I'm still an album person. But I am curious as a musician and as an independent artist, so therefore as your own label owner who has to think about all of these things, do you feel there's a place for albums? And what is your relationship with albums? Those may not necessarily be the same.
Every time I'm asked about whether albums make sense in the here and now with the internets and the streaming, I think back to listening to my mother's records. There's one album called Band on the Run by Paul McCartney. And I just remember my younger self sitting, looking through the booklet, learning the songs. Band on the run, ding, 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 band on the run. And like repeating that album and repeating that album. And that's where I found out Nina Simone is the best thing that ever happened to me through that same process and that bubble. And for me, I believe so much in that bubble that I don't mind being an album artist for the rest of my life. And anytime I'm releasing music, if it's a single, it's usually because there is an album coming, unless I'm collaborating with someone else. But for me, a single is an indicator of a fuller idea, a body of work that will give more context about what stories we're sharing, you know. I think singles artists must continue to do their thing, you know. But I love the fuller story, you know. I don't just want to read the blurb, I want to read the book. And that's how I relate music or albums to music. I feel like singles are great. They're cool. They do amazing things for musicians, but it feels like a blurb. You know, I love the context of, ooh, so this single is actually track 7.
Yeah.
Ooh, what was being said here? You know, I love that. I'm like a sucker for that. So I think, albums for life.
Thank you for using the word records, because I get confused because I'll say records and somebody be like, what do you mean records? I'm like, oh, vinyl, sorry. Sorry, vinyls. I come from records and LPs.
Yeah, I've got a vinyl player at home, so I feel that. Even though I'm more on like the cassette CD generation, but like there's something that vinyl and record evokes. It's just warm and fuzzy.
Also nostalgic for some of us.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to there's a Bob Marley album, I think it's Kaya. And the first song, which is Kaya, I think it's Kaya or something, but the first song has a jump in the exact same space, at least on the record my father has. And I remember that from being like 9 years old. So when when I play it, because I have all my father's collections at home, when I play it, there's a beauty in that skip. But the quality is actually, in the general scheme of things, the quality of the sound is actually not that great. It's actually quite average. Like I could hear it better elsewhere.
Yeah.
But just because it's tied to, it's tied to that nostalgia, it puts a smile on my face every time it skips. Like
I feel
randomly,
that. Yeah. Yeah. It's very endearing.
Which came first, Zoë Modiga or Seba Kapstad?
Seba Kapstad came first. So Seba shout out to my guys. I love these people. I'm laughing because I should probably not say this, but if you're still listening at this point, then just keep it to yourself. But I'm laughing because I'm thinking every time in recent years that we've been together, we like take shots before we do shows. So every time the name pops up, I literally just have that image in my mind. And it makes me very happy. But Seba Kapstad was formed when I was in UCT. So myself and Manana, who's a Grammy Award-winning songwriter and good friend, beautiful artist as well, we would like do jam sessions together at school. And there were different levels. There was A level at the top. Forgot if there was a B, but there was a C level that everyone used to practice. So we would jam, and I loved that space because that's where things could happen. So we'd all kind of be learning what we need to learn for school and like learning the Charlie Parkers. And then at some point, you're just like, love you, Charlie, but I just need air. I need to breathe. I need my brain to breathe. And songs would be written and jamming would happen. And Sebastian was a foreign student that came and got lessons in South Africa from Germany. So we started jamming. We started jamming together. And that's how that was formed. So that must have been 2012, 2013. And yeah, he was like, no, we need to make this an actual thing. There's something really cool here. And that's what we did. Now, Zoë Modiga was, I hate to speak about myself in the third person. I was always doing music and I was a professional before this time. But the brand in and of itself got elevated a little after Seba Kapstad. Seba Kapstad had already released its first album. Okay. And then I released my first album in 2017 as well. So same year, but Seba came first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I see you guys are actually quite active, especially now. It feels like you're quite busy with that, as well as being quite busy with Zoë Modiga.
Mm-hmm.
What's that marriage like? There's, you as the solo artist, and then there's you as part of a collective. As a solo artist, you have your band. Everything works a particular way, and over here you're having shots before a show. Right? How do you navigate between the two? Do you have to?
I love the different people that I can be because these two entities exist. I do not take shots before Zoë Modiga show. I need the adrenaline. I need the prayer part of myself, right? Mm. I need a certain channeling because it's of a different thing. Mm. And I love that. I love that too. But I also love taking the shots with my homies because these are my friends. And every time we see each other, it's always been too long before the previous time. Like when we're going to perform, which we did recently, it was like quite a bit of performing after like maybe a year or two, So I love the versions of myself that I'm able to experience. And I think they both feed me in very important and beautiful ways. This is going to sound strange, but sometimes I genuinely get fatigued with just pursuing myself as Zoë Modiga. Like, I understand the magic and the success that can come with focusing on one thing for a very long time. But me being a subject does fatigue me. Me like doing a lot of press, talking about myself and being asked the same questions fatigues me. Me posting another selfie of myself on my social media. Like I fatigue myself as a subject. So I actually need Seva Kapstadt to water something else that then waters me. And then it's like, whew. Like when we did our little like two show tour, it literally gave me back the fire that I needed to continue doing what I do. Because I didn't have to worry about costumes the way that I do with my own sets. We have our own image that we have that is laid back. You know, I didn't have to feel like I'm pulling all the energy myself, because that's what comes with being the artist on my end of things.
Yeah. But
with this, it's like 4 people bringing it up because it's our responsibility to do that, you know. So I love it. I need it. I'm grateful for it.
You also do a lot of collaborations. What's your approach to that? I mean, how do you sit and go, I would love to collaborate with that person? Or how do those come about?
I love a like-mindedness. I'm always asked, oh, would you ever do an amapiano? Would you ever do a house track? Would you ever? And the answer is always yes, yes, yes. But I think because people haven't heard these songs, it's always like, okay, your yes is actually a no, no, no. But for me, it's like-mindedness, because what influences collaboration is the thing that is the most important to me, which is the message. Because the message is the thing that I have to intuitively get. And collaboration works for me when I'm able to articulate that place where I get things from the ether, which is the message. Because like the vocal runs and everything, that's just the cherry on top. But collaboration is based on a like-mindedness and having a similar agenda about something or another. And sometimes the agenda might be a musical one. Might not necessarily be words, but there's that feeling of, ooh, we're supposed to be doing something.
Yeah.
And this is happening. So yeah, that's what influences collaboration.
I mean, from what you're saying, it does feel like, because you know the music industrial complex went and created genres and went and said, okay, these are the boxes and this is where it must fit. Whereas artists like you, it's not about that. It is about, you know, how does it feel? Does it make sense? And it's all music. It doesn't fit into any of these marketing boxes, which is why somebody will probably go, yeah, I couldn't see you doing amapiano because it's like, oh, you're in jazz. But then
who said that? You know,
and then you're like a jazz singer, or you're this, you're that. And I remember, I mean, you referenced Nina Simone and her. I think there's a quote where she's like, she bridles against this definition of being a jazz singer, because she was also a classically trained pianist, and it's like, no, I'm not that. So you know, I guess it's that it goes back to that perception and the desire to confine and box, which comes from a business perspective. When you go back to kind of histories of record business and companies and genres and those sections in those days, the CD shop or the music shop, it all comes from primarily a business perspective. They were just trying to figure out how to package it to sell it, as opposed to the people creating it going, oh, this is why it fits. Like when you're creating music.
For sure. Exactly. I'm similar to Nina, and maybe I'm just jacking her whole vibe with this, but I find that it's difficult to say this without sounding like I'm rejecting one thing for another, because jazz and classical music has been my school. But I don't resonate with being a jazz singer. I just think I am a singer. And I compose music, and I'm a songwriter, and I don't want to be called a certain thing because I don't like the disappointment that comes from people who call me something and then expect said thing from me. Because I did not say that I'm this thing. Yeah. Now you are disappointed as a purist because I'm not fitting into this thing that you said I am, that I never said that I am, you know. But yeah, music, right? Music.
So as we finish up, what's giving you joy now? Like,
there's no way we're finishing up. I'm not ready.
Okay, well, we can keep going. I'm happy to keep going.
Pardon, do you mind repeating what you just said? I literally, in my mind, was like, nah.
But what's giving you joy? Like, what's this, you know, and this is kind of as a human being. This is as Namtandas, as Palesa. What's kind of giving you joy right now, outside of the work?
Ooh, that's very interesting now to have that question asked, because I'm finding that my joy is, I'm having to fight for it a bit more just in the season that I'm in right now. As I speak to you, there's a lot of things that I'm having to, there's a lot of pulling of the carpet under my feet that's happening right now in my own thoughts and in my private life that is kind of making me engage with joy in a weird way.
Mm.
But what brings me joy is like a hearty laugh, man. Like, you know, that laugh that like makes your cheeks hurt.
Yeah.
And your intestines feel like they're gonna burst open. Like I'm constantly pursuing that. I don't care which season life puts me in. If things are bad, if things are good, and everything in between. But if I can just laugh, like from the heart, not like smile in a photo at an event, but like laugh, like actually laugh. That brings me a lot of joy.
I mean, you say that and I'm thinking I haven't had that in, I couldn't even tell you the last time I laughed like that.
Oh, man. Will you cry?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're saying, you and your stomach hurts. Like I used to look to stand-up comedy for that.
Oh, wow.
And so I used to collect a lot of stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And I've just found, I don't know whether it's the stand-up comedy that's out these days, because a lot of it feels more like social commentary and you know, and less about the laughs. But I find that even when I watch stand-up comedy, I'll crack a smile, maybe like a little chuckle here and there. But by and large, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, cool.
That is so interesting, because for me, comedians, I don't, outside of like a few witty ones, I don't find laugh there. I feel like I'm looking at them through a glass house. Like it's almost like I'm seeing them and I'm imagining the processes that it took for them to come up with the punchline. Like that's how I kind of take them in. And I will allow myself to laugh, but yeah, like that kind of laugh that I'm talking about has never come from there. You know, it's always been from the really like random stuff. And I've got like a pretty dark humor that is like not for the climate that we're living in right now. Like I will be cancelled. I've tweeted about it before and it's been hilarious because I realize there's so many like me. But like those, like the dark humor or like just like being able to find laughs in like really peculiar places is what usually makes like the laugh to cry thing, or something that is so recognizable to all of us that comedians do. Sometimes they have a way of showing us ourselves.
Yeah.
That in a way that causes us to like, I'm crying, laughing, you know. But yeah, I hope we experience that soon. I hope you do too.
It sounds like a very worthy, because like you said, you're actively seeking it, and kind of that's what I took away. It's like, okay, I had that moment. It's like I haven't experienced it in a while, and actually to get it, you need to be deliberate about it. And perhaps that's a symptom of the world that we're living in now. This is just kind of, I'm not processing, I'm just speaking, but just if we look at, for example, so much stuff gets put out, right? Social media, internet, etc., etc. There's so much stuff being put out that we've stopped becoming deliberate about what we're taking in, because we're literally just kind of scrambling to, it's like being waterboarded.
Yeah.
Like you're scrambling to, you know, to take in this water, but there's so much coming in that we're not as deliberate about going and actively seeking the things that give us joy or give us pleasure or, you know, fulfill us or make us content, etc., etc.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like our brains are low-key turning into pap. because of all this, that like, actually a friend was saying yesterday that it's so weird how when you put out a post, you're waiting for like these likes, and when you don't get them, you're not happy about it. But if you think about it, you wouldn't meet 300 people in a day that say they like a particular thing. So how does this make sense on the internet? And as a person with some kind of a platform, that these things matter to, not to me, but they matter in the business of what it is that I do.
Yeah.
Because these are conversations that I had. What are your statistics for one thing or another, right? But it's like, why do I want 300 likes? I'm not even going to see 300 people that are going to say, oh, I like your Ben and Betty. I like your hairstyle. Like in real life, maybe like 5 people at most, or 2 people, or 1 person will be like, oh, this reminds me of my childhood. And yet, like, this is the way that we expect each other to interact with each other on this, like, internet world. Like, it's weird.
So I will say, if or when you step away from it, even if it's temporarily, you start to realize how true that statement is. Like, I mean, I joined Twitter, 2008? I watched a lot of South Africa come onto Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, and people become famous on Twitter and all of that. And over the last year and a half, I have literally pulled away from Twitter, which is ironic for me because at some stage it became a discussion in my marriage, where it's like you're spending so much time on this thing, right? And I'll go through the day not thinking about it. Like it doesn't connect. And then we'll publish a new episode of the podcast, or I have an email newsletter. So I'll put out the newsletter and it's like, oh, I should promote this stuff because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I want more people to engage with it.
Yeah.
And then I'll go onto Twitter and literally go, latest episode. And then I'm gone. I'm not even scrolling. But it took me to go, it took me taking a step away. And the longer I stayed away, the less I had to say when I came back. You know, you're off for 3 days and you come back and you have all these thoughts because you always tweeted these things. And I think about the thoughts and it's like, yeah, but okay, sharp. And then I move on, right?
Sure.
And then I come back a week later and I've got this thought and it's like, yeah, maybe I should write a blog post about it, or maybe it's an essay.
Yeah.
Or it'd been really nice to share this, but it's fine. And then I'll move on.
Yeah.
And so I have fewer moments of, that's it, tweetable thoughts. There was a time when every other thought
was a tweet.
Like, I think a sentence is like, oh crap. When I'm done with this meeting, I need to put this tweet out.
Shot.
And then getting to the point where it's like, I'll get them still. And it's like, it's a shame that I can't really share it. But it's all right as well. And then I move on.
I envy that. That sounds like a version of joy, actually.
So it does require one to be deliberate in the beginning. There's a guy called Cal Newport. He's written a couple of books which I really like. And one of his books is Digital Minimalism. And he talks about, so with the digital detox, when people take these like 20-day or 30-day detoxes, what would happen is that you go away and then you come back and you literally ramp up to make up for the last 30 days.
Yep.
So the way he talks about it is also being deliberate about thinking about each of those platforms, such that when you hit the end, you don't come back in like one go. Like you have now interrogated and understood why you use this platform versus that one, and what space it and purpose it fulfills. So when you come back a lot more restrained and not to everything. He's written a whole book on it. I think I butchered it a little bit, but that's the gist of, for me, that's what I took. That's what I took from it. It's
I get you.
And so I I do still have social media platforms that I spend time on.
Yeah.
Like Instagram. But even that, it's not at the level I used to. But I had to be very deliberate about it. And then I do get moments where, especially in the morning, because I journal every morning, then I will be journaling and then I get a thought and then I pick up my phone and then all of a sudden it's 15 minutes later and I've been on Instagram.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So I still get those moments, but I continue to try to be deliberate about that as well. Just in terms of, so I'm reading more. I'm thinking about other things more. All of a sudden I have time.
Yeah. I guess for me, my thing about it is in sharing things, there's this requirement to have a personality, to have this well-curated image, to have these posts that you share. And I guess this fatigues me as well, to be very honest. I love putting image together. I love using the visual story with the music and creating a world, right? I love doing that. But the way in which it exists on social media is so like popcorn that it is very tiring. And I think the work I do requires time, but social media is not waiting for anything.
Yeah.
It's like choo, 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 choo. So I'm having to be like, ugh, okay, I have a personality. Hi guys. And it's a bit much. Even for me, it's a bit much. And I'm envying the place that you're in. I'm hoping that I can give myself the permission to back the hell away.
I mean, so here's an irony for me. If my interactions with you had been on the basis of the Zoë Modiga, the artist on stage, the performer, it would have probably been slightly different. And what didn't even change it. It's just it structured my perception of your personality. Was when I was at Kaya and seeing you walk into spaces and interacting with you and getting this and getting what feels like you. So that when I saw that on stage, I could go, okay, yeah, no, that's the performer.
Yes.
But this person I can have a conversation with.
Shot.
But that came from interacting with you. When I look at, say, for example, your tweets, I will get that because you have a particular context. But I wonder if you look at the comments, you go, these people don't get it. Like, they don't get this person.
Yeah.
They're thinking about that and their idea of how it's supposed to work.
Whoa.
Right? So it's like, this person is supposed to be like this, and this is how it's supposed to work. So you making a particular comment, I'm finding that a lot of people don't get that. It
can't land because the context.
Where's it landed? That's why I like that tweet. Like that tweet about, the think pieces, etc., etc. I interpreted it, I suspect I took it in a very different way from a lot of people in the comments.
I hear that.
Because I've been around you as you, being you.
Yeah. Oh, I have never looked at that like that. And that makes perfect sense. Because performance to me is world building. It is something that is very honest, but it is also a world that I think should be aspirational in terms of watching it. Simply because I grew up watching, 80s superstars, 90s superstars, 2000 superstars, and I love that thing, that pulling in of people, of an audience to someone and being like, this is a very deliberate story that is being told, and there's like that wish, that like wide-eyedness of taking them in, and I hear what you're saying in terms of like the humanness of things. It's funny because at my album launch, which happened recently, I had two friends, Langa and Spa, who are both singers, and Spa actually said something that reminds me of what you're saying now, where she was like, I just wish people knew your heart. She's like, there's things where I can see people don't get it because they don't know you, actually. They don't, because there's this world building that's happening on this end. I don't know that my brand is relatable unless it's like conversational in that way. Maybe relatable by messaging and the things that I stand for, but basically you've given me things to think.
Yeah.
From which lens is this relationship with audience made?
It's just one of those moments where my mouth moves as the thoughts are coming in, and then at the end of it's like, hey, there was something. I do all right sometimes. Like, sometimes sometimes some things come out of that.
Yeah.
Now we're definitely winding down. But what, beyond you've got an album out, how do you see, or how do you want to be able to kind of create your art and build the world kind of moving forward? Like, what's the next, as you go with the flow, let's say, what does the next, what do the next couple of years look like beyond I release an album, I get up on stages, I perform. What else are you looking at within that?
Well, I've never operated in my practice through music from being a mastermind of anything. It's always been about intuition, flow, and grabbing from those places. But I would love to pursue storytelling in different ways. I'd like to get in different cars and explore it, whether it's front-facing, maybe through acting, more performing, or it's at the back end, But I think there's something so beautiful and that's so culturally impactful when it comes to stories being told, even if it's not my own, that I'm very interested in pursuing and then allowing myself to pursue. And in having that curiosity and the questions that I always have, even in the music, but asking them in different ways and using different vehicles to get there. So I'm excited for that, that more questions happen, more engaging happens, more stories are told, more time markers are made. Because where conversation is, you can kind of mark the time. Yeah. Oh, it was at this time, So, yeah, and I hope that is impactful. I hope that evokes people's emotions. I hope it's influential. I hope it's meaningful. And if it's not, that's okay.
I can see you doing music, film scores.
That's
and series and stuff. So I'm a fan of Max Richter. What's Max Richter? Who does? He's done a lot of series. Then he has an album called Sleep, which he plays a concert for I can't remember how long, and everybody came to fall asleep in the space. So it's I love a good story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see you. Because like you said, you approach an album, it's like a novel, right?
Yeah.
So I could see you doing like a series and a score where it takes you on a journey as the visuals take you on a journey.
I love that. And that is one of my things that I want to do. So, yay!
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is one of the dopest conversations
Thank you.
I've had. I appreciate it.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
The Listen to Your Footsteps podcast is produced by Zebra Culture. If you have ideas of what we can do better, people you'd like us to have a conversation with, or would just like to share a thought, you can email me on info@zebraculture.com. To check out past episodes, go to kojobuffer.com/podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, Listen to Your Footsteps, check out kojobuffer.com/book. There are details on the various spaces it's available at. I'd also appreciate it if you could leave a review or comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, there's the Zebra Culture by Kojo Buffer newsletter where on a weekly basis, I share a curated list of articles, playlists, videos, etc. that have caught my attention. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.